So here's a movie about making business deals around basketball shoes that's probably better than any movie about making business deals around basketball shoes has any right to be, which is to say it sounds like the premise of a sketch of making fun of office guy business politics movies, and sort of is the Aristotelian ideal of exactly what that sounds like. Lots of very well-regarded actors, resplendent in middle-aged paucity, lounge lugubriously under unflattering fluorescent lights amid nostalgic clash of late 70s corporate beige and early 80s neon that defined the era's interiors, chugging coffee, smoking indoors, loudly typing on clackety-clack keyboards, all of it calculated specifically to drive film writers of my age and older into misty-eyed lulls of back-in-the-day remembrance, to help massage away the fact that they've decided to define this by the fact that it's interesting in part because it matters in spite of being kind of a frivolous subject featuring a bunch of people who aren't really that important or compelling to history, and the most interesting among whom isn't actually all that compelling or even likable as a character, that being Michael Jordan himself, who doesn't appear on screen save for news clips and is effectively played as a larger-than-life off-screen presence, even in a story that takes place before he's even become an NBA rookie. And yet it works. In fact, it really works, because Ben Affleck happens to be one hell of a director. He's assembled a terrific cast, and everyone involved knows not to try and push this to be more of a story than it's trying to be. What do you know? Good movie is good. It's a small film that knows it's telling a very specific story that becomes big after it ends, and that's okay. Old school, here's a thing that happened, it's kind of interesting, bet you didn't know this part of it, here you go. Storytelling built around the notion that you can make a good movie about anything if you have good actors working from an interesting script and you direct it well, though it helps to have nominally interesting story problems to solve, like how do you make shoe history interesting, and what do you do about Michael Jordan being an iconic guy, but also kind of boring and irritating as a personality? The answer in Air: tell the story around him and about everything but him. So our setting, well, it's a sports movie, technically, and so it must also be an underdog story, in this case based around the Nike company doing a very good job selling every type of sports-specific sneaker but basketball in the 80s, because that's all about Converse and Adidas, and that whole division possibly being on the verge of shutting down. In order to keep the Nike basketball staff employed, Matt Damon as talent scout Sonny Vaccaro wants Affleck as company owner Phil Knight to back him on a bold strategy. Instead of spreading their lower-than-the-competitor's budget to sign several sort of promising NBA rookies to endorse Nike sneakers, Sonny wants to use their entire budget to woo only one player and build an entire campaign and specifically built and branded product around them, a rising star named Michael Jordan, who he believes is going to become a superstar. But they don't just have to convince the company investors, they also have to win over Jordan himself, who's determined to sign with the more trendy Adidas brand, and most importantly of all, Viola Davis as Jordan's protective and extremely business-savvy mother who looks out for his career. If they fail, everyone will lose their jobs. If they succeed, well, you know what happens, because that's what happened. Everyone knows Jordan signed with Nike and they created the Air Jordan, and it was the most iconic sneaker ever. And you know that this movie is good because you actually end up giving a shit about will Michael Jordan say yes to a shoe deal he in fact said yes to in real life, and that has theoretically less tension than the question of whether or not he'll win any of the games you know he won while it's all playing out. That's good filmmaking. And this is because the story in part becomes about the framing. How did they get this done? Or rather, how did it happen in this version of the telling? Because I'm sure there are other versions. This one of which makes it a running set of exchanges between Phil, Sonny, Mrs. Jordan, and Chris Tucker as Howard White over the how and why of endorsements and athlete self-ownership. There's a coda towards the end that tries to put a "this was actually something more meaningful" bow on the whole thing that feels like a bit of a reach, honestly. I feel like it was already good enough just being a here's how they did a thing movie, but I understand why it's there, and it is interesting. I did kind of look at the ending text and go, oh yeah, okay, that's a bigger deal, I guess. I would actually kind of want to see a sequel about that. I mean, I don't need to, but okay, that's interesting. I actually forgot that happened. Referring more to Matt Damon's character than Michael Jordan, obviously. Everyone in it is good, including a low-key turn from Jason Bateman and Marlon Wayans showing up as George Raveling. It breezes through a comfortable watch, like a less self-important version of Moneyball, and you walk out feeling like you know a little bit more about how some things worked out, even if you didn't really care about these particular things. Solid 7 out of 10, a layup of a thing, and hey, look at that, I made it through with only one hoops metaphor.